artist. In this video, I'm going to go over with you how to make a cup that is an animal body, like this one that's going to be a wolf. So you're going to need your mat. If your mat's still kind of rolling up some, what you can do is unroll it and roll it in the opposite direction. So with the color on the inside, and that's going to start to help that to flatten that out some. But then what you're going to do with your clay is you want to break it into two pieces. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it and I'm going to twist it in my hand. And I'm going to try to break it into two chunks. And I want one chunk to be a little bigger than the other. And that chunk is going to be the cup. So not quite even. So then what I'm going to do, roll it into kind of a ball. Doesn't have to be perfect. But I'm going to roll it into a circle. So a circle rolling makes it almost a circle. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my two thumbs and I'm going to press them inside. So I made a crater. And that's going to start to be my cup. So what I'm going to do is use my fingers on the outside, thumb on the inside, and I'm pinching. And what I'm doing is making my cup bigger. So you can pressing with your thumb makes it bigger, makes the inside bigger. You can press with your fingers, and you can also pull up. So pulling up like that. See how I'm taking my finger from the bottom and pulling it up? That's going to start to make it taller. So using my fingers and my thumbs, pressing down to make a flat bottom, and just kind of working with the clay to try to make it into a bowl or a cup, whichever form you're trying to make. I'm rubbing my finger in the bottom, kind of like in a circle, to kind of make the bottom flat. And if you get it too big, what you can do is you can make a cut, and then I'm going to overlap that to get rid of that seam and make it a little smaller. But work with your cup bowl until you get it to about the shape you want. Perfect's not what we're going for, just kind of a cup or bowl shape. So there's what I have. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to make my animal. So I'm going to take a piece that's a little bigger than what I want, because it'd be better for me to have too much than not enough. And what I'm going to do, I'm making a wolf, so what I'm going to do first is I'm going to start to pinch part of it to try to make that snout shape. So I'm pinching and pressing, moving that clay around. It's better to move the clay than to try to stick a lot of pieces onto each other, because every time we stick a piece on, we run the risk of it then falling back off later. So better to have too much clay and just trying to work with it, so moving it around, than to try to add a bunch of pieces on. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pinch part of it to try to make like a triangular kind of ear shape. And I'm going to try to do something similar, so try to get something kind of symmetrical looking on the other side. I like to look at it from multiple angles to see how it's looking from multiple sides, because we are making 3D art here. And I'm going to push some of the clay out to make like the side of its face, because they have that fur that kind of sticks out on the sides. Kind of makes the bottom of their head look a little wider than the top. So working with that until I get it about the way I want it. And now I'm going to decide where I want this to go on my cup. And I have this extra piece that's a little bit too tall. So I'm going to take my knife and kind of carve off the top. That's one way we can flatten out the top. I'll show you another way later. So I'm going to decide where I want this to go, and I want it to go about there. So what I'm going to do to join these two pieces together is I'm going to score and slip. So I'm using my fork and scratching that up. And I'm going to do the same on the back of my head. Scratch those two up. And I'm going to take a little bit of water and put some water on there. So water, so scoring and slipping. Slip is just water. We're kind of making a watery clay mixture right here by rubbing it on there. What this is going to do is act like a glue to stick this on. So now I'm going to put these two pieces together. So I'm going to press them, and then I'm going to twist. So see how I'm wiggling that head? Wiggle, 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 wiggle. And what we're trying to feel for is when that starts to give us some resistance. So when the twisting gets harder, when it's harder to twist, we know that it's stuck. And then what I'm going to do is where I can, I'm going to try and rub a little bit, maybe move a little clay, and try to get rid of my seams. We don't want seams. Seams are a place where our clay could remember that it used to be two separate pieces, and we don't want it to remember that. We want it to be united. Alright, so now my head's on. Let's make a few other pieces. So that's my side view. Alright, I want to make a leg. So I'm going to take some of my clay, and I'm going to roll it in my hand, or roll it on the table, and make a coil. And I'm going to make it a little longer than I want. And I'm going to bend the bottom just a little bit to give it a foot. That's better than me sticking a foot on there, because then it might fall off later. So, and I'm going to make a back leg too. But here's something different that I'm going to make. I'm going to make the back leg longer. And I know you're thinking, Mr. Sala, that's silly. Their back legs are not longer. They're not, but there's a good reason for why I want them to be longer in this case. So let's attach these two. So for the front one, I'm going to make a dimple. And I could have done this with the head too. So there's two ways you can join things. Scoring and slipping is one. The other is we make a little crater. See that crater? Add my water for my slip. And then stick that in that crater. And now I'm going to twist again. Again, feeling for when it starts to get harder to move. And once it starts to get harder to move, I know that I've done my job and it's sticking. Alright, now let's add that back. So remember, I said I wanted the back a little longer. The reason I want the back a little longer is this head is heavy. And I want to compensate for that weight a little bit. So I'm going to do that with the legs and that tail. So I'm going to score and slip back here. And I'm going to put the leg on the side. That's also going to give my wolf a hip. So I'm going to add a little bit of extra realism with that leg on the side. And we're going to try to counterbalance that head a little bit. So wiggle until it doesn't want to wiggle. And then I'm blending some of this into my cup so that it looks like it's a part of it. So there I get my hip. I'm going to blend the bottom and a little bit too. Alright, so there's that extra hip. And now I'm going to make a tail. So make another coil. And with my coil, I could decide if I wanted it to be a handle, so I could attach it to the two backs, or I could attach it to that leg too, depending on whether I want it to just be for looks or whether I want it to be for function. And I think handles, it's better to do dimples. I think it makes a stronger handle. But you could also score and slip. But make sure you water wiggle blend on both. Alright, the last thing I'm going to show you is one way we could even out that top. I did mention that I could cut it. I used my knife and I cut it to make it even. Another way you can also even out your top if you don't want to cut it is you can make a coil, and you can coil the top. So I'll show you that on this side. I'm not going to do my whole top, but I'll show you what it would look like. So I made a coil. I'm going to scratch this up. I'm going to scratch my coil a little bit too. And slip. And then that coil is going to help it to even out. I went a little too long there. So this side was a little low. So then what I'm going to do is wiggle it in place. And then try to blend the coil down into the cup, or blend the cup up into the coil, but try to bring those together. But that coil at the top is going to help to even out the top of your cup. So see, that gave me a little bit more even of that. And then I have my cup, and I would do the same on the other side to add those two legs. But I hope that's been helpful. Have a great day. Happy making.